Good evening, folks. My name is Robert Kapshenga. This is the African Speak. This evening, we're supposed to have our conversation on the tragedy that struck the residents of a suburb in Kampala known as Kiteezi, where all of the waste, the solid waste of Kampala, has been deposited for the last over 30 years or so. My guest this evening is Ivan Bamoyana. I'm trying to get him in, so all I'll do is just ask you guys to give me 5 minutes to sort out his connectivity. But just give me 5 minutes. I'll be back with you shortly. So let me just do that right now. He'd been in or earlier on. He seems to have lost his link. So let me try and get him in. So, folks, here, good evening once again. And as I told you, as I promised you, we're supposed to be discussing the Chitezi tragedy. I know that for some strange reason, so Ivan, I can see you as a listener. So, Ivan, I'll just say, okay, great.
Hello, Robert.
Man, I thought you were buried also under some kind of. Can you unmute your mic, Ivan, please? Just click on it. Ivan, try talking. Good evening, Ivan.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now, Ivan. Good evening.
Hello, Robert. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Ivan, I can hear you. I don't know if you're able to hear me. Let me just check with other people and see if they can also hear me. Maybe the problem is on my side. Okay.
Hello, Robert. Are you there?
Ivan, I am here. I don't know why you're having trouble hearing me. Guys, let me just do a quick test. If you can hear me and you're on the space, just do a thumbs up or a fist bump, and I'll know that you can hear me, guys. I just need to check this because I think Ivan is having trouble hearing me. Okay, Ivan, I can hear you, but what I'm going to ask you to do, I don't know if you can hear this, but just log off and log on again. So folks, I'm going to let Ivan go ahead and present as we sort out the fact that he can't hear me. We're communicating through another route, but Ivan, if you can hear me, just go ahead and say what you got to say. Folks, let me do this. Let me get Ivan to log off, log on again, and then we get started. Please be patient. We're going to be starting shortly. Okay, so Ivan, if you can hear, I dropped off a second invite. Let me just do a test with someone else and see if we can. Okay. Uh, Ivan, I hope you can hear me. I can see that you are logged on again as a speaker. Good evening, Ivan. Wes, I need to test this with you. I can see you're on the line, so let me just test this with you. Wes, let me just see if you can speak. Or Jose, one of you two, come on and let's do a voice test. Hi, Ivan.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, wonderful. I was getting a bit concerned.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So, Ivan, how are you?
I'm very fine. How's your good life?
I, well, it's quite good, so I can't complain. And I must start by thanking you very, very much for agreeing to come and share your expert knowledge in this matter. I'm really, really grateful for you agreeing to do this.
You're welcome.
Good. Wes, I have solved my problem, so I can let me just greet Wes for a bit because I was going to test my sound. Wes, good evening.
Good evening, Robert.
Ah, man, you stick around because in case I am blocked from continuing the conversation, you'll take over. So you, but let me introduce you to Ivan. Ivan is a great guy. Ivan, meet Wes. Wes Kambale is another really, really formidable Ugandan. So you guys greet each other, then we start.
Good evening, Ivan.
Good evening to you. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm great.
Okay, now let's get started. Ivan, you are you are a man with good good knowledge of this subject. So people who've joined this call from all parts of the world may be wondering who is this Ivan guy and how is it that you know about the Kiteezi landfill waste management tragedy. Just tell us what's your area of expertise, what do you do, how long have you been doing it, and why are you so familiar with this subject?
All right. Again, I'm Ivan Domoyana. I'm an earth observation researcher and lecturer at Makerere University,
What,
geomatics
what,
and land management.
what does an Earth observation researcher do?
Okay, so there's a mathematics called geomatics, which is about taking measurements
Mhm.
and doing analysis of the Earth's surface, which involves the atmosphere, the plane surface, and then what is underground.
Mm,
So with any phenomena that is big in nature, we can measure it,
mhm,
whether it's a land or whether it's an environmental factor. And
mm,
so with that science, we are
mm.
able to measure out and help disaster risk response, environmental impacts. We are able to track diseases. We are able to do climate analysis. We are able to monitor expansion of cities. We are able to monitor land use. We are able to monitor wetlands, forests, lakes.
So
Yes, we are able
when you monitor these things, what is the kind of information and data, whatever it is that you come up with? What do you produce?
okay, so usually what we produce are mappings,
Mm.
and these mappings have types. We may have 2D maps, we may have 3D maps, we may have live maps, we may have dynamic maps, we may have static maps, just like a picture.
So this information that you produce, what is it supposed to help us with? And let's be very specific. I mean, you've been mapping and tracking and monitoring Kiteezi.
Yes.
What's the kind of information? Is this early warning information? What is it about? What who is supposed to consume it and use it for what?
Okay. The kind of information that we do pick is on maybe the extent, and then we'll tell you whether you are out of horizontal. We'll monitor your vertical expansion, and we'll tell you, hey, your height is getting a little out of range.
Mm,
So you're probably going to get into some bit of trouble. Your slopes,
mm.
maybe this is the kind of angle you need to be with. So we do have that kind of information uh, taken over time, and then we are able to get trends out of it, and you can use it for making decisions.
Okay, so let's go directly to the point.
Okay.
If somebody is sitting in Uzbekistan and listening to this conversation, they may be wondering, where is Kiteezi in relation to Kampala, and what was the place being used for? Just describe it to somebody who has no idea. So where is Kiteezi and what was going on there?
Okay. Well, I will tell you that Chitezi is located in Wakiso district. It's about 14 kilometers from the city center,
Mm.
and it is Uganda's only landfill. Now,
What
there's
is
a
it?
slight.
What is a landfill?
A landfill is
Uh,
an engineered dump site. So
uh-huh.
what that means is that you can have a pit and things,
Mm.
or you can engineer that pit. For example, you put in a liner to make sure that you trap the leachate. You put in perforated pipes to make sure that you're able to trap out gas eventually, so that the slopes at certain angles, you fill by compacting, you fill and compact, so that becomes an engineered land dump site, which is a landfill.
So it's an area where all
In
our
itself,
go on,
um,
go on.
Chitez in itself has a history, so which may help people who want to understand what they're dealing with. So allow me just give you a preamble on what Chitez is.
Go ahead.
So it being Uganda's only landfill or engineered dump site, Chitez
Mm.
was designed to have an operational life of about 10 years, and
Mm.
was actually supposed to close in 2006, and it started off its operations in 1996, 1997. However, you have to appreciate at that time there were collectors and transporters delivering municipal solid waste to the landfill were actually supposed to pay a tip, but they opposed this fee. When they opposed this fee, it resulted into illegal dumping around Kampala city, and it reduced the amount of rubbish or waste that was being brought to the landfill for a long time. So the rate of dumping there was not exponential for a certain period of time until around 2011. The illegal dumping, and it was attributed to the tipping fee.
So let's just slow down a little bit, Ivan, because I want to go back. Basically, we are talking about all the rubbish that we collect, that we generate around Kampala. Let's call it Greater Kampala, which involves Wakiso and Mukono, if I may put it that way. That most of this rubbish that is collected by these rubbish companies or whatever dumping is all taken to was all being taken or should have been taken to Kiteezi. Hello, Ivan, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I was saying the place we're talking about is the one single place where all of the rubbish generated in Greater Kampala was being dumped.
We cannot say all because Entebbe is part of Greater Kampala and they have their own site. Nansan has its own dumping site. But what was happening is it served Kampala. It's a site belonging to KCCA,
yes,
but also served Wakiso.
Okay.
Yes.
So you were saying that in 2011, it, by that time it had already reached its capacity, utility capacity.
Yes, we can argue that it had not really reached its capacity, but
Yes.
after they
Ivan, I'm losing you a bit. If you could just unmute your mic because you can't. We're losing you. Ivan, are you there? Wes, can you still hear me? I need to check with you just to be sure the problem is not on my side.
No, unfortunately, we've lost Ivan.
Yeah, so let me just send him a message for him to try and log on again. I think it's probably I can see he's still on, but I think he's
Wes, you may have to take over from Robert. I think he's
no, we can hear you. It's you we lost. Are you back?
We've lost him.
Ivan, we both lost you at some point. So if you're back, you can please continue.
Okay, let me just, guys, folks, we're going to try and work on this connectivity with Ivan. Let me get hold of him quickly.
All right.
Wes, are you there?
Ivan, we
yes,
can hear
Ivan,
you.
I am. Ivan, can you hear either Robert or me? Because we can hear you.
Wes, let me try and I'm sending him a message. Folks, we're kindly asking you to be patient with us. Let me just I've sent off a message to Ivan to get him to do something with his connectivity. We'll get back on shortly. Ivan, if you can hear, I've sent you another invite. Just click on it and come back in. Yes, Ivan, I know you're back in as a listener. I hope you're stable in one place and have a good internet, because that must be what's interfering with you now. Because me and Wes on this side are hearing each other quite well.
I think I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So you were telling us that after, that's where we lost you. So please go back and let's start from there.
Yes, I was saying that in 2011, the illegal dumping was attributed to that tipping fee. So
Yeah.
it was actually abolished in 2012. And so we
Right.
saw a drastic increase in the waste delivered at the landfill, especially by private collectors.
Okay. Did the site have somebody managing it to make sure that the things you talked about, the slope, the slant, and all those things, and the I don't know, compacting, the management of the site was being done technically?
Yes, I believe that around that time, that is what was being done. I happened to actually be part of the team that worked on the extension, which was done between 2011 and 2014. And
What
I think
kind
it
of
was
extension was done?
okay. So when the landfill reached its fill, they bought another 6 acres. I think it was under the KIDIP 1 project program by the World Bank. So on the southern part, they had to dig up and re-engineer part of the landfill again in the extension. So they developed another so much capacity. I don't remember the cubic meters, but it was able to take that. But because the number had gone up exponentially when it came into operation in 2014, it filled up around 2016, that extension.
So how did you know that there was a disaster waiting to happen, and when did you know this?
Okay, so I cannot say that there's a particular time to know when that disaster is going to happen. But the moment you run out of horizontal expansion, because our approach is from, for example, the data we have is from the Earth observation perspective. That means,
Yes.
what did we measure? What did we look into? I can tell you that, for example, we used 2004 as the base year. And we found that around 2004, the actual waste covered about 10 acres. And by 2023, we were looking at a total coverage of around 33.3 acres, signaling a 30% increment. And so when we looked at the past years pre-disaster, we saw that there was no horizontal expansion observed. However, it was the vertical, which was the option to absorb those volumes.
So we were going up higher and faster than
Yes,
we were expanding.
we were going up higher. I think around 2008, KCC was able to procure another 4 acres on the side, but I think they took time to re-engineer it, and the years therein involved COVID. But the idea is that we had a lot of vertical piling than horizontal. Yes.
And that area around Kiteezi, what is the main land use in that area?
So we've also done an analysis of that. I can tell you that after the disaster, after that disaster, actually, we looked at how the land use has been changing around Kiteezi. And we saw that initially around 2004, that's when we have the earliest Earth observation images. There was barely any house in the proximity of the landfill.
Right.
So over time, because I've seen the idea that there is a buffer which is supposed to be there, but you have to appreciate that the law does not work backwards sometimes.
Yeah.
So maybe then there were no guidelines, because the new guideline on the guideline on the buffer is more current than the initial acquisition. So what happened is the land around Kiteezi was actually owned by people. So I think over time they started occupying that land.
What should have been the buffer?
The buffer, Kiteezi, is a class 2 landfill, and its buffer is anywhere between 200 meters and 500 meters.
In this case, when you did the images, what was the distance? What do you see as the distance between the homes, the areas, the land use, and the buffer? Was there any?
No. On some sides, there's zero. Zero distance. There's zero. And actually, what caught our attention as researchers to move in again was that house in Chitetika that was affected by the landslide, by the west slide. There's a house, Kiteezi has a valley behind it on the northern side. And that valley separates Kiteezi and Chitetika.
Chitetika, yes.
Yes, so what happened is the west slide went to a house that was 100 meters away from the lowest point of the valley, not from the landfill itself. And that house is on an elevation of 10 meters from the lowest point of the valley, over a distance of 100 meters.
Okay, I want to see that I understand you well. That the waste moved a distance of 100 meters from where it was.
Yes.
And then climbed up another 10 meters from the lowest point in the valley, another 10 meters up.
Yes.
And buried that house?
Yes, and the occupant of that house was the administrator at UMI, and she died. Wow. So that moved us to actually understand what was this kind of movement.
What happened? What was the kind of movement that triggered it?
So we did move in, and we saw that the highest point of the landfill was so much. I don't know if the figures are necessary. It was around 1193. It was around 1193 by elevation in meters.
You give us a comparison. What is that height? You use a building.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the comparison so that it's easy for you. And then the lowest point where the sludge settled was around 1163, making a difference of around 30 meters.
So it dropped off 30 meters from its height at that time.
Highest point to the lowest point where it settled. So that height difference of 30 meters, you're looking at let me see, a storage building of 3 is around 10-12 meters. So you're looking about at a storage building of around 9 floors, of around 9 floors, flowing down.
Wow!
And it went through that valley and moved downwards. So it moved from its highest point to the lowest point, a distance of 800 meters. So the entire impact is in a distance of 800 meters. That is not short.
Wow.
So
is that in all directions?
No, that is on its longest side. But I can tell that the total area that the west covered is 22 acres.
That is massive.
Yes,
Because
those are
that's new. So it was on, currently it was sitting on what? On how many acres before?
yes, it was sitting on around 35 acres.
So it added another 22 acres to its current location.
Yes. So it's
50
big.
acres.
Big. It's big.
Okay, so just a quick one, and then we go to what exactly happened. So according to you, there were the failures in terms of what was the failure in managing this, and what triggered the earth to move, or rather the dump site to move.
Okay, now I can tell you that is a very intriguing question. And right now, it's not something we can put fingers on. When such an event happens, there are so many contributing factors. For example, you may find that it came down after a downpour. The rain may have
rains.
Yes, the rain may have increased the weight and weakened some points. There are still investigations on what was the initial slope before the rain happened. There are still investigations on what was the compaction factor. Was it well compacted? Were the slopes following the design? Okay, were there cracks that were observed? So all those
There was
questions.
a letter from the director of public health saying that there was a crack.
Yes, and I know that there was also a research paper. I've seen one of my colleagues on this line who was part of that publication. There was a research paper that was published in 2015 that was saying we suspect that this place may collapse. What
in
what
2015?
You have? Yes, there was a research paper by students from Makerere, and they were guided by one of the geotechnical people. I've seen a lot of experts here, and I think he was one of the people that provided that guidance. So yes, there was that guidance that we suspect this may collapse, but there's usually a degree and then an idea that we can adapt or mitigate. So the investigation looks into what was done when this information was out. So that is largely what the bodies that investigate are doing right now. What may have reported, there may have been an intervention, or how much of the intervention was done. So that's what we don't know. But what happens in this world is the contributing factors become many.
But what you are saying, let me try to understand you, that this landfill should have been regularly maintained to make sure that, as you say, the slope is in accordance with the technical provisions, and also to just make sure that the compacting is being done right, and somebody confirms that that is what should have been happening.
Yes, and that's what regulatory bodies do. Regulatory bodies like KCCA, who own that site, ideally supposed to be doing that. They're supposed to be doing that.
Ivan, let's go to the human beings, because that's really where the tragedy is.
Yes.
Tell me, looking at the UBOS statistics and looking at the area that was affected, and the human settlement there, but also the nature of human activity in that landfill. First of all, just remind us, what time did that landfill collapse?
7:15.
In the morning.
7:15. Yes.
So presumably, in the surrounding area that was affected, there were, as you've given that example of the woman who passed away, whose house was affected, could you just make an educated guess? What do you think the number of households that could have been in that area?
Okay. My guess is indeed educated. So what we did, usually when these disasters happen, we know that we are on the front line. So we do not look for data. We create that data as Earth observers. So we get imagery, the latest imagery we have of that area. And we sent a team on ground. that mapped the extent of the impact, and also actually put eyes in the sky. And so we did actually now measure out, compare the two layers, and we marked out the houses that were impacted. Those houses were totaling up to 65.
So would it be correct to assume that at least each house could have had an occupant at that time?
Yes, it's okay to assume that. We appreciate that there may be multiple houses, but they are not homesteads. So we know that there were the math has come down to around 45 households that were impacted. That means the idea is they may have been a person or two. But remember, there are people, people we call scavengers. This is not in a bad way. That's actually their name.
Okay, so let's leave the word scavenger. These are people who work on the landfill. They go to pick out materials for recycling, and they do work around that area for whatever reasons. So we just so that listeners know, the word scavenger is not being used in a derogatory manner. It's just to describe the activity. So go ahead.
So, and then there are also operators. For example, there's an excavator that was impacted. There are cars that had come to tip. I think you saw some of those pictures, and I think one of them was left in that rubble.
Wow.
So you when you look at the math, it tells you that we still have to discover people.
Okay. Again, I'm not going to hold this to you, but if you were to make an estimate, how many people do you think we've lost in this thing?
For me, I would argue we have 100 and plus people around that idea.
Because of
I cannot stamp out, because people have put up missing people cases. But then remember, people are people, and there's some logic in there. For example, there are people who left the village and they are in town doing scavenging, and no one has actually bothered to check on them, or they told their parents they're doing a different job. So for me, when I look at numbers, I want to remain human as well, besides the math. I want to appreciate that there are people in different circumstances. There are people passing by. There were people close to the leachate treatment plant. We lost our full leachate treatment plant. There are instances which we can where the people were driving those cars that actually flipped. So there's the idea that maybe let's search some more. Maybe there are some other people who are lost in there.
So the 30 or so bodies that have been accounted for are just really a fraction of a much bigger number of people that were affected by this.
Yes, I believe that the number which was gotten, remember when the rescue service came in, the 65 houses I'm talking about are largely in one place. It's more of people who settled in a valley, but the houses are really close to each other.
Wow. So those people were buried in there. We can't even get into there.
So now that's where most of the concentration was in the beginning, and you can understand the logic of the rescuers is to concentrate on that area, because that's where the likelihood of most people was.
Yes.
But then you also have to account that some people came out alive. Some people came out alive. Some people were able to run. For example, the children of this lady survived because the Shamba boy threw them over the fence and told them to run. So there were people who escaped because they saw it coming.
So it could have been a lot higher.
Yes, if it could, for example, if it happened at night, we thank God that it didn't.
So, okay. Let me stay with one particular issue that in your analysis that I read much earlier on that I would like you to talk about a bit more. So when you've got these kinds of dump sites, let me call it that, the landfills, they generate their own other risks. You've been talking about leachate, dangerous gases. Can you speak in ordinary English? What is leachate? And what are the kinds of risks that these landfills pose before even such a tragedy happens?
Okay, so before even the tragedy, we in the design of these landfills, they will account for leachate. Leachate is that toxic liquid that comes out of rubbish. It's usually black in color. So it's usually trapped around the landfill because it even contains heavy metals. Wow. So they actually take it into a leachate treatment plant where they are able to oxygenate it, remove certain things, and then release it into their what we call constructed wetlands. So they may release it into a constructed wetland, and then wetlands do a really good job in cleaning water and removing impurities and purifying the water. They have a way of doing multiple sieving, and they will, at the end of the day, they will come up with, you will get good water out of it.
Done naturally by the wetlands.
Yes, done naturally by the wetlands. But they can be helped with a constructed wetland to actually beef up the process. Yes.
So you're saying that at the site in Kiteezi, there was a plant for doing that?
Yes, there was a plant for doing that. Though I've heard over press the Lord Mayor say that it had broken down.
Wow.
Before the landslide. Sorry, before the west slide.
So then you said something about the risks now from, let's go to the environmental side of things. You're saying there were streams that were running through that area that have now been affected. Just explain that a bit more clearly for guys who are listening.
Okay, so when a primary disaster like a west slide occurs, a secondary disaster usually unfolds.
Okay.
So, and the authorities, actually, one of the reasons they move in quick is to do what we call a disaster chain analysis, so that they can begin to adapt or mitigate secondary disasters. Now, from the west slide, the communities around usually embrace themselves for things like bad odor, leachate, which is which pollutes water sources because it can seep through and get to underground water. It can also affect surface water. And then they brace themselves for things like scattering of wastes by wind and scavengers like marabou stalks and other nuisances like vermin, mosquitoes and flies. But now in Kiteezi's case, the waste lead into that marshy valley.
Okay,
that we talked about between Kiteezi and Kiteetika. Now, when it's lead, the valley has a drainage in it that conveys leachate and stormwater from the upstream downstream. So when that west slid, it blocked it.
Okay.
Now remember, we've said earlier that a dump site is engineered when it has a lining down. So the waste got out with, now it has no lining down, and it's spread over 22 acres. So now what happens? I go on?
Yeah, go on. But
so when there are things that are happening. One, the waste obstructed that drainage, so it has caused flooding upstream.
So which areas have been affected by the flooding?
Those are on the northern side. They are largely part of between Kiteetika and Kiteezi, the upper part of that valley. Then when you look at the downstream, the waste actually, where it covered houses, it covered them with some form of sludge. And so the movement between those, some houses were not damaged, but were affected. The sludge had lost power to break a house, but it did flow in between those houses. So now movement is actually compromised, and utility of those houses. Now, also note that it has had a treatment plant that was for safe release of leachate into the environment. But now it is completely buried in the debris. Now this leachate is freely discharging into the channel.
So this black water, let's call it black water, because guys listening,
yes,
this contaminated black fluid that is
water,
really toxic, is
yes,
now flowing freely into human
yes,
places that are occupied by human beings.
Exactly.
So which neighborhood?
It's joining the stream.
Okay.
It's joining the channel and then moving. Now, here is the actual issue that this channel joins Walufumbe stream. There's a stream called Walufumbe. Now, by Earth observation, we tracked Walufumbe, and it flows through Kumbuzi. If you know Kumbuzi,
where
then goes that place. And then there's that swamp behind Kumbuzi that connects to Chanja. Then it flows towards Chanja. Okay. And then luckily there's a swamp there that has little tampering. So we believe it may do some cleaning, and it continues through towards the areas of Nigeria. Now those areas have a lot of people, and a lot of homes have done those diggings of underground water.
So what you're telling me, Ivan,
yes,
what you're telling me is that there is a very high risk of waterborne diseases because of contamination of streams and underground water sources that are serving neighborhoods in the places that you're talking about.
Yes.
But also,
and until we have experts moving and tell you that this swamp has done a sufficient job, it's important that we are careful. Let me explain to you a case of London cholera outbreak of 1854. I know it's a very old year, but I want to dig the lesson out of it. They treated cholera by all means by isolation to make sure that people are not, there's even no means of spreading, but cholera actually continued until one researcher, John Snow, tracked down where it would be coming from. And it was a well where people collect water from that had actually contaminated by fecal material. So now you will appreciate that one well in a community can actually continuously bring this problem. Also, you need to appreciate that leachate will come out of that rubbish for over the next 10 years.
For how long?
Over 10 years.
Wow. So the toxicity that has been released by this Landfill into the surrounding areas, especially into the streams, will last 10 years.
No, the leachate will keep, if it's not controlled, will keep coming out of that rubbish and contaminating the water for a very long period.
So it has to be
now,
managed at site in Kiteezi.
Exactly. We need to have an intervention right there.
So let me go back, Ivan. So because that story you tell of London, I think that particular point is even that tap or whatever it is where the cholera it's still preserved up to today. But just back to these neighborhoods that we're talking about. So, but you see, Kampala also has another habit. A lot of our vegetables and fruits that are sold on the street sides or in markets are washed in those water sources.
Exactly. That is true.
Wow.
And if you look at these things I'm talking about, I'm sure those who follow my LinkedIn page are able to see them modeled and they're able to see them visually.
I'm actually looking at it now.
I do.
So, folks, if you want to read or get a bit more information that you might want to know, Ivan has been posting on his LinkedIn page the findings, so even the images. So if you want, you can just go there and have a look at his page on LinkedIn. You will find a much more extensive analysis that he has put there. So let me just check with two people. Wes, you're still there?
Yes, Robert, I am. I was just trying to check what Ivan is talking about via Google Earth.
Okay, go ahead, Wes. Yeah.
And it's really something that we should have thought about for a very long time. It is scary just watching it from Google Earth. Just seeing the water stream, the leachate treatment area, and if he said that the leachate treatment plant was overtaken, and if that is true, because there's a playground that is next to it, just behind it, and then quite a number of houses. So it takes me back to what he said, that this could be more than 100 people that could have been buried, because there are literally houses everywhere.
True.
So, yeah.
If you look at his images,
Yeah.
let me just, Wes, let me also just check, because I think some other person had asked. Raymond, are you on now?
Yes, Robert, I'm on.
Okay, so you follow the conversation just in case
Sure.
I am also overrun. Then you can.
No worries,
Okay.
I'm on.
Okay, good. Wes, had you finished what you were saying?
Yeah, sure. Mine was literally just an observation and
Yeah.
literally in shock. So, but I think Ivan can still go on.
Okay, Ivan, we've talked about the risks of waterborne diseases, but there is also in my view, because one of the things you do is you track diseases and things that arise out of this, and you talked about disease outbreak. Could this also be a breeding ground for mosquitoes and therefore potential for malaria?
It's actually bigger than mosquitoes.
Uh-huh.
You have vermin, you have rats. You're going to have rats in two incidences. One from the causal perspective and the impact perspective.
Explain.
You have rubbish that is now in the city
because it has nowhere to
one
go.
of the researchers that yes, one of our researchers has found out that most of our rubbish is 60 to 90% organic. You're dealing with foods. Our rubbish is so waste.
Yeah.
You're dealing with foods, you're dealing with those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, and that is food. Now, people have been getting that out very fast. So now you're going to generate, I'm sure you know the London story of rats as well.
Yes.
You're going to get rats and cockroaches. And then you're going to get flies of different nature. And so we need to now be on the lookout. I know that the health teams are really doing a good job trying to make sure that they cap these things right from the start, and they are really very aware. I've interacted with them, they are very aware of this, and now I know there are efforts to try and open up that drainage and make sure that there's some kind of separation so that the water they can control the flooding and everything. But I tell you that that opening up of that pit is going to give us that impact. So we may likely be looking at several diseases breaking out.
You explain. You time we have. You tell us what kind of diseases, which neighborhoods. I think my friends over Nigeria and what need to start worrying about vermin and so on. Just tell us. Just tell it to us graphically.
No. Okay, so this is the thing. Intervention action involves a big scale of things. It involves intergovernment, government, communities, and you as a person.
True.
Now, if you know that we have an issue in Kiteezi, and then you wait for your rubbish to accumulate so that you quarrel with the person who takes that rubbish. Why haven't you taken my rubbish? Begin to understand that at that very moment, you're beginning to expose yourself. You're having more food for all kinds of pests in your home. Okay, so that I want to drive it from the micro perspective. So you're beginning from there, from your home. That's the beginning point. So in your home, now that they are not picking the rubbish because they have nowhere to dump it and they are constrained, now you need to begin doing your own management of your Kiteezi. Then it goes to the community. There are communities where they dump rubbish in a particular place. You've seen that in Kampala. So they all begin piling rubbish there. They have pushed it away from their immediate homes and piled it there. So they begin to feed cockroaches. Now we know that these things basically just move germs to the places where we feed from.
Okay.
And those are responsible for stomach issues. Those are responsible for diarrhea. Those are responsible for all kinds of
Ivan,
upsets.
let's first slow down. So
Robert.
we've got vermin. So we're talking cockroaches, rats, which could spread. They carry with them germs that cause diseases in our homes. So, and it's not just the landfill.
Yes.
It is the fact that we now have nowhere to take our organic rubbish, which we will, although if we take it out of our houses, we're going to dump it very near our houses. And therefore, that is going to be a perfect breeding ground for cockroaches, rats that will then now come back into our houses and bring the germs that cause all sorts of stomach diseases. And what other diseases do you see?
I'm not an expert in that area. I just know they are able to spread disease.
Wait. Okay, so let me just let you guys, you folks listening, know. So it's not just the guys who are directly affected by the toxicity that's delivering vermin from Kiteezi, but because now in the city we have nowhere to take our rubbish, we must be conscious that because we're not dealing with rubbish, we're inviting vermin. You also said something, Ivan, by the way, about marabou stocks. Tell me.
And now those scavengers we call the vermins, mosquitoes, and flies nuisance. But the marabou stocks actually have a contribution. They will pick up certain bones, eat them, and everything, but they are going to scatter rubbish. So they are going to give your environment a certain form of uncleanliness.
So yes, they will be eating the stuff, but they will also make the place dirty.
Yes, I can give you an example. The people in Kiteezi who do that activity, I really feel bad calling them scavengers.
The people
who do that activity. Yes, the people who work direct. I don't, because there are different types of work in Kiteezi. But the people who work on the dump site and pick those extra things, we actually reduce the rubbish we bring in by about 5%. And they take it to recycling and everything. Yes. But then you have to appreciate that Kampala generates about 2,100 cubic meters of rubbish
daily.
You're talking about 170 trucks
every day
of rubbish. Yes, every day.
Okay.
And so you realize that it's actually a lot. 5% is nothing. So even that marabou stock, take that computation down to your home. That marabou stock tearing down your can and taking out a few bones you left does not actually make a big difference.
I am tempted to ask what could be done, but I'll do that at the end. Let me ask you now about gases and fumes. talk to me about
Yes.
that effect. What are the kinds of gases that landfill uh, generates, and how has it been managed, and what does the risk pose here?
Landfills develop, we get from them what we call landfill gas, LFG, but it's largely methane.
Mm.
Methane gas. Methane gas is flammable, and it's used even in cooking.
Mm.
Now, when it's badly managed, we have many instances where actually it has exploded around a landfill or even in homes. So it can actually explode. And so when these landfills open up, that means that gas has several points of escape. Yes, and so you may find it is responsible for certain irritations, thematic risings in an area, because it's actually more methane gas being released.
So you have got respiratory diseases, basically.
Yes, you have respiratory issues coming out of that.
So we could have a different strain of COVID.
I do not, I cannot say. Yeah, I do not know, but we have a duty, right from an individual to a community, to the organizations in charge, other entities in charge. Like, we all have a role to play on this entire thing. Yes.
So talk to me again. I mean, I don't know if we had quite finished. So about the drainage, and so how do we? I mean, what are the, as apart from the Chanja people, who are the other affected neighborhoods? And then what is the effect of these incessant heavy rains that are coming down, and how are they affecting the work of people there in terms of managing this situation?
The rains are coming. They are not yet here.
Yes.
They are what we call off-season rains. So one of those is what stays experienced. But the rains are coming September, October, November. Those are the short rains, and sometimes they are really intense. So when they come, we will have more leachate. So they are literally washing the rubbish more and releasing more of that leachate. And it's now going to be combined with stormwater. So there may be a dilution factor, but it doesn't eliminate things like metals.
That's lead
from the water.
That stuff.
Yes, it doesn't eliminate it. So if I'll go back to when you asked what is the cause, and I told you there are multiple causes we can look at. Even here, we need multiple players. We need geotech people, we need environmental people, we need water quality people. We need to assemble a lot of knowledge to actually curb that.
Vector control.
Yes, we need
public health
to have a good. Yes, that's why I was telling you that the disaster chain analysis has to really account for this.
Okay, let me give you a job. I'm going to appoint you right now. Okay, don't worry about it. It's of no effect. But I want you in your mind to assume that I have appointed you as the head of the task force to solve this problem. What team? Just describe for us in very clear detail. What teams would you put together, and why?
One, there are quite a number of approaches I would use to deal with that. But one is to save those who are not yet impacted. The landfill, I believe, is not done having waste slides. Okay, so I appreciate what government has done, is trying to do with a 200-meter buffer. And so that is one of the first steps, because we have now other people around who are also at risk. So we have a risk group to rescue first. We have actual life to rescue first. And so
you
I
would,
would
so you would
assemble.
need to evacuate the families
Yes.
that are within 200
Yes.
meters.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you've seen on my page, we've actually already done that analysis, and there are around 727 houses to deal with.
Wow.
If government was to actually execute that idea, I know that they are pregnant with that idea, but execution, it's important we first secure the rest of the people, because if you're looking at that number of houses, those are many. We already are frustrated with a 75, with a 65.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that point. And then, that would involve flattening that landslide, so that that waste component. And so I would need the civil guys, the geotechnical people, I would need the environmental people. I would actually have environmental people redo the impact assessment and also do the social impact assessment, because now that assessment actually tells us it deals with a number of people. There are water specialists who will tell us how much seepage is going underground. I know that the last one said that if that water went through the wetland over a distance of 1.5 kilometers, it would be clean to a certain extent. We would need to analyze surface water, so I would need the water people. I would also need the people who are in charge of I've forgotten how we call them, but there are people who monitor the rodents, snakes, all those
Vector
types
control.
of things that are coming up. Yes. So there are vector control people, and then there are scientists who actually just study that to actually move in and tell us what vectors are we dealing with, so we can already prepare for
I
them.
think they're called zoologists or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Wes, you're the Google expert, man. What do you call these guys?
Yes, Robert.
Do a search. What do we call the guys who can monitor animals, these vermin and so on?
Those small animals
that transport illness, germs and things like that. I think they're called zoologists or something. I have no idea.
Can't come in mind quickly. Let me do a search on that and find out.
You find out and tweet it. Ivan, continue.
Yes, so we would need actually those people. We would need a resettlement team. That means I would need valuers to actually have those people paid before they are actually moved. So we would need to have valuers actually value those people out. Okay. And then we would need a team to foresee that closure. So we would need a lot of environmentalists, a lot of environmental engineers, and then do a restoration over that place, whether they are putting a solar plant or whether they are doing greening. That would be beautiful. I would need people to do pollution control, because there's pollution happening in that area. So I see myself assembling environmental engineers, ecologists, water resource specialists, leachate treatment experts. I would see myself getting in land surveyors to monitor for me those levels, getting quantity surveyors to help with compensations. I would see myself getting in carbon analysts to see what we are emitting from there, livelihood restoration people, because we need the lives of those people restored. I see myself getting in air quality people, noise and pollution control people. I see myself getting in some sociologists to help cover the social aspect, and of course the political wing to manage the people's political aspirations of being moved from areas where they feel politically attached. Yes, so it could be quite a team.
Yeah, and you'd be okay. At least you've assembled the team for us, so now we know exactly what we need. Ivan, let me bring in Raymond. Raymond is joining us. Raymond is somewhere in Oxford. Raymond, share.
Yes, Robert. Um, Robert, I don't know if sharing this would be in bad taste, but
They're
I
here
had
now,
actually
so go ahead.
yes. So when when it happened, when Kiteezi happened, I reached out to the city council here and asked them if I could spend a day with them. Some people on this space know that because I was in a WhatsApp group with them. So I spent yesterday with the team. And just for context, the Oxfordshire City Council is the best disposal city council in the UK. So they take disposal of waste very seriously. I know this because in my first week here, actually first, second, and third week I was fined, and
Why,
then
why, why haven't they gotten rid of you? Why are you still?
I must be doing something.
Okay, go on, Raymond.
Yes, but I wanted to first share a personal story, and I think that it would fit into what Ivan was talking about. In my first, second, and third week of being here, I was fined in my first week for poor disposal of waste. I was fined in my second week, and in the third week, I was asked to go and take a lesson at the city council. So there are 5 bins inside my flat, and they are labeled. So I have a glass bin, a paper bin, a plastic bin, an organic waste bin, and a general bin. They're not fancy bins. I mean, in Kampala, they'd cost you about 30,000, 40,000 shillings. But I insistently and consistently kept dropping what should have been organic waste in general bins and what should have been paper waste in general bin too. And the team was unhappy about it, and they kept fining me, and eventually they took me to a lesson. And I think that that's one of the things that Kampala we should learn, how we dispose of waste within our own homes. It shouldn't be hard, at least for most of the people in Kampala, to have 5 bins at their homes and to label those bins and say one is a glass bin, another is a paper bin, another is a plastic bin, another is organic waste, and another is general. Because by labeling the waste at the start makes it easy for the disposal when the teams come to pick it, and makes it easy also for them to figure out. The other thing I learned is you'd be shocked, but more than 80% of the electricity of Oxford actually comes from the waste that is disposed of in Oxford. So 38,000 homes in Oxford are actually powered from the waste that they get from just the waste that is collected from within Oxford. But they've got a 5-way process for waste disposal, and it starts with a campaign of asking people to refuse the waste that they don't want to use. So there's an active effort out there when you go to the supermarkets by the city council um, to rein in on, say, if you're not going to eat this food today, it's advisable that you don't buy it, because then it will go to waste and then it will make the disposal even harder. The other way is to reduce the amount of waste that is generated by each home, then to reuse the waste that you have within your homes. If you have anything that you can still reuse, you actually score points in the city council by reusing it. Then repair and recycle. So and I've shared a document with you, Robert. I don't know how you can share it with everyone, but I got that document yesterday from them. So there's a whole process before you get to the landfill, and it's taken the pressure off the landfill. Over the last 10 years, more than 50% of the waste that used to get to the landfill doesn't get there anymore because of this sustained campaign to have people not get their waste to the landfill. But I think the thing that I wanted to emphasize was just social behavior change within our own selves. Like, what can we do? And I think maybe Ivan can advise us. If we are on this call right now, what do you advise us to do with the waste that we have in our homes right now to dispose it off better, to reuse it better, to recycle within our own methods before we can get to the landfill. And I think that those social behavior change methods might help in the very short run to relieve pressure on Kiteezi, but also might help in the long run to release pressure on all of us on how we dispose our waste.
A beautiful submission. I actually buy in. I buy in from the point that it's so easy
Ivan,
for us on such. Yes.
just 1 second before.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hello, Ivan, are you there?
Yes, I can hear
What I
you.
was saying is just give me a second. I wanted to let Wes think about this because I'll come back to you, Wes. Wes, you came up with a really, really genius IT approach to the activists who are in jail as your contribution to tracking. Just start to think about ideas that people like you who are very versatile in the digital world can do a campaign for behavior change, the type that Raymond has been describing. And I'll come back to you, Wes. I'm just giving you time to think. But I want to go to you, Ivan. Please respond to the things that Raymond is suggesting. And then when you're done, I will want to talk about the possibility of actually converting waste or Kiteezi into some kind of energy source. But you first respond specifically to what Raymond has talked about.
Raymond raises very beautiful points. Very beautiful points. Each of us has a duty in their own premises, and if you've traveled by any chance, you know that the color green is for this particular type of waste, yellow is for this particular type of waste. When that is done, it becomes very easy to utilize, to recycle that waste, to convert it into energy. For example, and if you dumped all your foods into one can, they would be turned into fertilizers. If you dumped your plastics into only one can, then they would be recycled for plastics. If you dropped your glass in only one can, then it would be easy. What we do here is we mix everything. So a person doing fertilizers will end up putting plastic. A person doing plastic will end up dealing with food. You've dropped the cavera with food.
Sorry, Ivan.
All mix. And so
No, it's okay. I had lost you for a minute, but go on.
okay, so what I'm saying is we have a duty, individual duty, to know with how we deal with our waste. Unfortunately, this has to be done across the platform. We still have incidences where people will throw rubbish out of their car with a lot of ease. We still have, and then they will complain that government is failing to manage rubbish. We will, and yet they can't manage themselves with their rubbish. We will have situations where people feel that rubbish has to be banned, and then others feel someone has to pick it. So what we need is a regulation that somehow forces behavior change. But now we actually have the people who are sorting that rubbish, pulling out the plastics, are actually now stationed at the dump sites and the landfills to actually do that work. And yet this change, the things we want to see are right with us.
Okay, so Ivan, let me first go back to Wes about behavior change. Considering all these digital platforms that we have, Wes, there's a lot of social consciousness and awareness that has been built about corruption and social engagement. Are there ways we can use these platforms to begin some kind of discussion around our own self-preservation? Forget about getting government to do anything. Let's start with what we can.
Well, Robert, when you said that, I think I was already ahead of you. I was making some notes in my notes app, and I think where uh, like a bit of civic engagement, things to do with awareness and technology itself, how it can come into waste management. I think I'll break it down in some bits of sections. And one of the things Raymond already talked about, waste sorting and recycling. We need to talk about it a lot. Um, Very few places you can go to, including manufacturing companies, can show you different bins where you can put different types of waste. So it is something that we've not adopted. It is something that we need to do in our homes. And the only way we can do it is by talking about it on these social platforms that we have. Normally, when we talk about something or when we do something, other people are most likely going to adopt it. So, for instance, Robert, if you went and bought those bins and you labeled them and took like a small video or did a TikTok and posted it, that could be the start for some people within your circle to say, "Oh, wow, what Robert was doing is actually good. Where can I get the bins? How can I do the labeling?" And then we can adopt it. In tech for smart cities, they've been using AI powered robots to actually do the sorting at the landfills. So they understand that sometimes it may be hard for the humans to do the sorting. So they are using AI powered robots to actually do the sorting. And for people like Solomon King, who is on the space, I think that is something he can look about under Fundibots.
I was going.
And then
I was going to
also,
challenge him on something else as well. I still remember. No, I still remember about 3 years ago when I did a space, and by the end of the space, he had generated a digital graphic that just went viral immediately. So,
well,
Mr. Solomon King, while we are talking, think of a digital graphic that can initiate waste management behavior change. So, sorry, go on, Wes.
all right, and then the other thing is we need to also start doing data-driven decision making. For instance, I don't know how many people have used this in Kampala, but we have a mobile application called Your Waste that people have been using, for waste collection. And I'm sure because one of the people behind that application is called Martin, is someone that I've known for some time. I'm pretty sure that they have data on where they collect that waste from, how many homes they get in touch with, maybe daily or weekly,
So,
and where
Wes,
that kind of waste is going. Yes.
between me and you and all the guys who are on this call, let's drive awareness around Martin's app, Your Waste, as a starting thing.
Well, that would be a start. I'm pretty sure that there could be
Dro-
another,
Drop
or
it on
we
the
could also
TL. Let's
start
start from
building
there
up.
while we're talking of ways. Yeah, go on.
Yes.
Sorry, Wes.
Because with this kind of data, when we use this kind of applications to do waste disposal, then we're able to, for instance, do forecasting. So we are able to sit down. Like I'm pretty sure that Uyo West should be able to tell that the next week we are going to need more extra trucks to take extra waste based on what they've been doing the previous week or the previous month.
Or even just the
Okay.
calls or the contacts that they are getting.
Yes, something like that. And also we need to do waste audit. So for instance, we can audit and tell which homes, which areas, which organizations are dumping a lot of waste
Wow.
because we know what we are collecting from them. And then if an organization is dumping out a lot of waste, that should come at a cost,
Right.
because that cost would prevent them or would enable them to do recycling within and not just dumping and dumping.
Right. So guys, let me just make this before I take on the question on energy with Ivan. I just want to tell you there are ways. So the big point that Raymond makes is behavior change that we're going to have to do for ourselves and for our own self-preservation. I mean, you've seen the risks that's going to come with vermin and poor disposal. Secondly, I think that Wes talks to the opportunity of the digital assets that we have. I mean, robots, graphics, apps, data that can then be used even by us as private individuals, just to be able to manage this thing on our own. We can actually sidestep the government and do this ourselves. And I think those are things, and then also behavior change through videos. We're all influencers. We use our different platforms, whether it's WhatsApp, whatever they call it, the videos, TikTok, all of this, all of us can come together and just change the way we approach waste disposal because it's for our own self-preservation. And I'll just ask all of you who are on this call, at the end, I will post the recording. Please drive it. Let many people listen to what has been discussed here because it will change a lot of thinking. It will also put the authorities under pressure to find a solution to this thing because already we are behaving as if nothing's happened. But we'll get back to this. Ivan, could we convert, or is this a perfect opportunity for us to start linking waste disposal and energy fuel generation?
Hear me well?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. So this is a big opportunity for us. We are time bound. I talk about it in terms of reality. We see that we actually need to dump waste. Nowhere we are it. Is a rush. My argument is for a chameleon to escape fire, it must forget the walking style of its ancestors. So we need bring in whether it's external effort and set up something that is engineered. Otherwise, what we are faced with, right? Seen a landslide sweep a road away in Japan, and it's next week. Here we are, one, and we are not in solution mode of something that is sustainable. For me, I have dealt late to think, but think fast. And okay, I can tell you that at the Michael College, Professor Nwagava studied of waste we have. It's problem. They have devised solutions you to us. To tell you what percentages are we going to be dealing with our waste, what is recyclable, what is able to, and what do we have? And they did it over a long time. But do we bring them to the actual solution? So for me, I think we need to utilize first our mistake. One of our mistakes was that research was there. Was it utilized? No. Saying we are going to stage. Do we need to begin from zero? Do we need to copy and paste London? Do we need to copy and paste South American case? Or we can develop a solution us. Do we do, cases here one cocoa where they have been pre-testing, recycling, and banning. So you're going to see, do we develop fill actions? You can ban, it has a recycle, it has in one. That's, do we, are you ready? That's how people can we sorting? But we need to.
Ivan, there's a bit of instability. Yeah? There's a bit of instability on your internet, so you may want to go back and sit in the corner of the house where you are sitting.
Oh, let me listen
Ah.
again.
Okay, you're good now. Okay, Ivan, are you back? Yeah, sorry. I think there's a bit of trouble with Ivan's connection, so we'll just try and get him back in so it's a much more stable. Um, Raymond, just can you talk a bit more about the energy option that you saw in Oxford? Um, Ivan, if you can hear, I'm just going to log you off. So please log back in again.
So I'm not a great electricity expert, but I was at what they call the Adley Facility Center, where the refuse is taken, converted into biodegradable waste, and then converted into energy. And when you enter the control room, they show you on the dial how many homes are being powered by that energy. And at the moment, the count is 38,000 homes. That could very likely be almost the whole of Makindye connected to the grid just using the waste disposal. But in the sense, at that point, at that level, it's really a government effort together with private sector players to know how much waste is coming in, how much watts it produces, and how the watts are put back on the grid. But the more important part where the city council gets involved really is on one, the social behavior, because even if you came to the landfill, the kind of waste that is disposed at the landfill is already sorted waste. The sorting process is done easily because of the social behavior. But there's also a firm insistence on making sure that people do not take on more waste than they can handle or do not produce more waste than they should. So there's an actual active attempt by the city council, and I could share with you emails they share every week, just reminding you about just waste disposal. But I think the deterrent measure is also important, because had I not been fined 3 times and then taken for a lecture, I don't think I would have taken it as serious as the city council wanted me to take it serious.
Yeah, you're just
So
an African.
I was being an African. But the fines were really important, because every time a fine came, it was signed off by the city council. And it was very clear why I was being fined. It was this type of waste was found in this type of bin, which is against the Oxford City Council. And this is how you're letting the entire Oxfordshire City Council down.
Yeah.
So when I went eventually to attend the lecture, I got a feeling that I am in a part of a community now. If I don't do my small little part, then I fail a bigger part of the city council. And I feel like back in Kampala, we don't have that idea of, if I don't do my small little part, the entire community fails. And that would, I think, be important.
Talking of Makindye, let me bring in someone who is there now. Daudi. Daudi, you're in as a speaker now, so can you unmute your mic? I let you in.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Robert?
Yes.
Raymond says you are 38,000 resident, whatever houses in Makindye. Anyway, go on, Daudi.
Thank you very much for having me, Robert. It was very moving to hear the information that's been given to us by Ivan, the key guest, the chief guest this evening. My view is going to come from a legal angle. First and foremost, I think, kind of human angle. 100 people plus died by estimation, and property was damaged, gravely damaged. And the risks that Ivan has talked about, the risks of to public health, the continuing risks presented by leachate and other things that may continue in terms of environmental pollution for about 10 years plus. My brother was, whom I've never met, but I follow on Twitter, was talking about a phone app, and inspired me to ask for a speaker opportunity because we haven't yet gotten to the point where we're going to use an app to solve these problems. There's a problem of bodies that are not recovered, so grieving families who have their loved ones buried under this waste that we haven't yet recovered. There's waste on 22 acres, 22 football fields worth of waste, which will not be collected by phone apps. There is leachate, which is leaking into water sources that may linger on and poison water sources for 10 years. To my mind, before we go to the apps, and with due respect and love, we should first think about the very important thing that this is a national disaster.
Yes.
It's happened now in the middle of the capital city. And it hasn't, unfortunately, been given the kind of attention that it should be given, even with the information that an expert like Ivan has put out. Perhaps because it's happened a little bit out of sight, even though it's 15 kilometers away. I'm sure that that site was chosen because of its, slightly being out of the way, but also because the victims are not people that would immediately dial into Twitter Spaces. Their relatives are not going to be, interviewed by mainstream media, etc., because they're poor people. Now, the major thing that I would like to say in my few minutes is one, there should be an inquiry. There should be an inquiry on two levels: homicide inquiry and a criminal inquiry along the lines of the amount of property damage and loss is also criminal. The loss in terms of environmental pollution, etc. There are people who are criminally liable for this. Let's not mince about words. What we've seen, and can you hear me still?
Yes.
Excellent. What we've seen and heard since this disaster occurred a week or so ago has been everybody kind of just pushing the blame around. I didn't know. We could have done something, but there was no budget. Robert, if they tell you that your house is falling down, the answer is not, and will kill you and your children. You may not have money to build another one. You may not have money to shore it up. But the answer to that is not, I don't have money. The answer is you step out, you get your children out, even as you try to raise money. But we know, Robert, that there is money. There hasn't been the priority. There is money.
Yeah.
There is money to be given to all sorts of failing companies.
Yes.
There is money for every other MP to be driving a 300, 500 million shilling car.
Yes.
That's billions of shillings. There is money that is spent on all sorts of things. Let's be clear, it was not prioritized. But who was responsible for the prioritization of Kampala's only solid waste management site? How many proposals have there been for waste to energy plants to be done there, and how many reports were there of risks? So that by the time you started filling it vertically, as Ivan was saying, and got it to the height of a 10-story building, a 10-story building, how many warnings were there? Whose responsibility was that? Are those people having dinner tonight?
Oh yeah, they're probably
Happy that
they're asleep right now.
Those people should be quaking in their boots. I'm sorry, people died. You see, and I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm taking it to the outrage level, but until people's lives are actually valued, you're going to get many of these kinds of incidents again and again. Now, it also speaks, Robert, if I may, the last point I was going to say, it also speaks to a larger problem, which has remained hidden, but can actually be compared to somebody who, like a driving incident. The example I gave to somebody else, that imagine somebody, for a moment, maybe something drops in their car and they turn to have a look at what's dropped, and run over a child and kill them. And imagine a person who sits in a bar and drinks themselves silly and then gets into a car. And then as they're driving off, they hit a fencing post. The person who hits the fencing post did something very deliberately that was going to inhibit his ability to drive properly.
Yes.
But on this occasion was lucky they hit a fencing post.
Yes.
The person who's in an inadvertent moment of just a split second of inadvertence cost the life of a child. One person may be sentenced for causing death by reckless driving. The other person might be sentenced for drink driving. The drink driver was only lucky that it was a fencing post. It could have been a child, it could have been a bus, it could have been 10 people. This person was only unlucky. Kampala and Uganda as a whole have been lucky that the amounts of drinking, if you could use corruption, inadvertence, incompetence as an analogy for drinking, for the amount of drink driving that Uganda has been doing, we've been lucky that something like this hasn't happened yet. But now something like this has happened. And if no accountability is given, and you just get more transparency, because in Uganda there's a lot of transparency, but zero accountability, next to zero. If there's no accountability, more people, Robert, will die.
Yes.
From all sorts of other things, from poorly inspected buildings, poorly constructed buildings, that might be waiting for the 1 or 2 Richter scale tremor to pancake. We have all manner of things that have been neglected, and everybody just doesn't do the job, just ticks boxes and goes off. So, somebody put a report. The person who raised the report said, "Oh, I told them that there was a crack in the it was so many stories high, and there's a crack, and it may fall." What did that person do when their bosses did nothing?
Great.
Do they not become accountable as well? So I think before we go to the Oxford's taken years to get.
But you see,
where they are in
Daudi,
where we are right now is the face of the disaster of
Daudi,
cholera outbreak in Kampala, vermin all over, and we need people to take accountability for that.
Daudi,
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to sort of jump on that point and say that you see the failure of accountability. You see, if the speaker takes money and public money and builds a private football stadium and is praised for doing that, that is the accountability you get. Why do you expect accountability from a guy who has not hired a grader to compact Kiteezi, or nobody who has come out to explain what actually happened? Nobody in government has said this is what happened. The prime minister went there and just started laughing around with the residents. And there's even interesting stories that the money she took wasn't even claimed by the beneficiaries, that conmen jumped in and got the money.
You see, you're absolutely spot on, sir. That these things all lead to something. They're connected. The dots are connected. The public money that's taken to do private things, the public money that's misallocated to do the wrong things, all these things end up, they're a little bit like the analogy I gave, the constant drinking and driving. We generally drink and we drive, and maybe one person at a time has been injured, the lack of aspirin in a health center, the people who die needlessly on the road because of road traffic accidents. But maybe all these things have not been big enough to call our attention to the fact that if we don't do things correctly, they can cost lives, and they can be major incidents. This, to my mind, is a major incident anywhere in the world. A city of how many people does Kampala have now? 2 million?
Well, it's 4 million at night, and
4 million
estimated to be about.
Let's talk about doesn't have a solid waste management facility. Just pause there and just think about that. That Kampala today is on borrowed time from Entebbe. Entebbe can't take all our waste, but Kampala doesn't have a functioning solid waste management facility.
Well, probably says
somebody must take accountability for that before we go to phone.
But you see, accountability assumes that a system is functioning and people must account for failures. But if a system is broken, then how? Okay, let me go back to Ivan. Daudi, you have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Ivan, are you back with us?
Yes, I'm back. I'm back. I can hear you. I'm back. I can hear you.
Let's see. Yeah,
I can hear you. Are you able to hear me? Hello.
Yes, I can hear you, Ivan.
I can't hear him.
Robert, are you able to hear?
I can't hear him.
I can hear him.
Okay, if you can hear him, then please ask him to talk about how people can prepare for disaster risk management better, because this is just one, but there's many more coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can hear you, so I
don't know if he's heard me, but
yes, I can hear you, so I can answer that. I don't know if actually the others can hear me.
Raymond, confirm it.
Yes, they should be able to hear you. I hear you.
Okay.
They should be able to hear you.
Okay, so here's the
thing. So I don't know if he's speaking, but let him speak.
Okay.
Yes, Robert, he's speaking.
Okay.
Okay, so here is the thing. The thing about environment that is so interesting, the thing about nature, the thing about climate is that it will force itself on the agenda, whether you neglect it, whether you don't pay attention to it. You don't need to enforce and put roadblocks so that it won't march to the parliament. It will disorganize that agenda, it will show up. So even for you as an individual, you have to realize that once there's an environmental issue near you, once there's a climate issue near you, once there's a disaster likelihood around you, if you don't pay attention to it, it will force itself on the agenda. The people of Kiteezi may have looked at that hype, that hip, and left it to the government, but it showed up on their agenda. The government may have looked at it and neglected it, but it showed up on their agenda. So how do you prepare as an individual? In every place you're in, assess the risk of certain things happening to your homestead, certain things happening to you. I'll give you an example of body 35, the 35th body that was found in the landfill. It was for a child around 6 to 7. And they nearly missed the body because it was so distorted, and they nearly missed it. That child belonged to a home. That child belonged to a family that loved them, but then they were not there. So we don't know the story if the parents are there or they will do the DNA. But when I saw that, I imagined that the children have left at home. Have I even assessed the kind of risk that can befall them? I see disaster can be anything. Okay, I was talking about rubbish. If you leave your rubbish there and wait to quarrel at the person who is supposed to pick it and they haven't picked it, what have you done about it so that it doesn't bring issues to your home? It's the cockroaches from it are the ones that are going to affect your home. They're not going to affect his home. So you need to begin to be aware of your environment first. You need to hold yourself accountable first. Like Council DFK has been talking about the drunk driving, drinking while you're driving. First, you're the victim before you say there's no Kaunyam on the road. When you construct your road, your house near a road, and you put a fence, can that fence stop a 14-ton truck? If it came towards your home, what have you done about it? When you're buying your plot, you want that corner plot. Can it handle traffic in a case a car lost control? So as an individual, you need to go beyond the beauty of environment and certain places and then make a choice. Sometimes we have to agree that some people have no choice but to settle in those spaces. Okay, and sometimes this is an act of God. But in as much as you can, in your means, assess your environment. The way you tell yourself, I'm overspeeding. Tell yourself, I'm near garbage, I'm near rubbish.
Raymond, is it still there?
Yes, Robert, he's speaking. We can hear him.
I'm near ABCD, so that it becomes easy for you to transcend these disasters. So Raymond, help me relay that message to Robert, because we are in the same space, but I don't know why he can't hear me.
Yeah, I think there's a problem of hearing each other. But Ivan, maybe to go back to David's question, in a structure like KCCA, who does the buck stop with on waste disposal? If we had to say this is the person that's responsible, who is that person in the structure of KCCA?
But
I
also, Raymond, in addition to the question you've raised, if you can capture this for me and pass it on to Ivan, what are the disaster preparation and management lessons we learn from Kiteezi? How do we uh, create, if there are risky operations, should people be allowed to build in those areas? Uh, how should we plan for those eventualities?
All right. Ivan, did you hear that
yes,
question?
I did.
Great,
First of all,
great. So you can answer those two.
yes, first I'll begin with your question, like who is the last dot to that in KCCA. I'm not so sure who the last dot is. At the end of the day, we will say government. Okay, so we cannot pinpoint, oh, it's the director. Then we'll say the director wrote to the ED, then the ED wrote to this. So we can, at this point, we cannot drop that point. But the accounting officer for these organizations is largely the person of the executive. So did they actually now make that discussion? So at the end of the day, that's why there are investigations to actually track down that structure. Are you able to hear me, Raymond? I can hear a certain purpose in your background.
I hear you. I think that's Robert.
Yeah.
Your microphone is on, and I think we can hear you moving around the house.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
So he talks about disaster response. One of the things, like I said earlier, we have to do is we cannot afford anymore to neglect the environment. See, when youth set a date that on this date we are marching to parliament, there was all kinds of mobilization to make sure that they actually do not march to parliament. How much more effort should we make when we say this is going to collapse and kill people? We should double that reinforcement. We should double that effort and now protect the people from that that is likely to affect them. The landfill landslides are common actually in areas of Bududa, in areas of Kasese, in areas of Kawale. But what should we do? You're going to find that there's already a discussion that Kiteezi may actually have had a slide of waste, but it did not kill people. And so then we did not pay attention to it. When environment gives us these warnings, we need to actually respond. And one of the responses would have been to actually begin moving people, because life is actually never recovered in this. You can pay people 5 million, but it is not sustainable. You can not take away someone's parent at a cost of 5 million. They will never sustain their lives with that money. So it's very important that we actually move in when the environment wants. For example, the leachate is warning, but have we moved in? Have we moved in? At what point do we move in? So these become very important things to us. And that's why people say there's negligence, because a warning has come and then you've not actually moved in. So for me, the idea would be to hold these people accountable. Uh, Look out for these warnings in the public spaces and begin to make noise about it. The way there was noise about the health system in Uganda, so that we wake them up. So sometimes I think they need that push. And I love that social media is doing these drives peacefully and they are actually being impactful.
All right. Robert, are you still there?
Yes, I am here frustrated that I cannot
Okay.
hear Ivan at all, but that's all right. If everyone else can hear him, that's perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. Have you guys finished?
Yes.
Sorry,
So I think you
Robert.
can shoot any question you have.
No, I think really all I want to say now is to express my gratitude to Ivan for agreeing to do this and bring a very, very informed and educated perspective to a really, really huge tragedy that seems to have gone unnoticed or even ignored. So that's one thing I really wanted to say to Ivan, and teaching us what we ought to do in preparation for the next disaster, because there are many coming of this nature. So I want to thank Ivan. I hope Ivan can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. And you're welcome.
Were you able to hear that, Robert?
No, but you're
He said he can hear you and that you're welcome.
all right. And then I want to thank Wes. Wes, are you still there? Maybe you I can hear.
Yes, Robert, I'm still around.
So thank you very much, Wes. I commandeered you, cashiered you into this. But can you go and consult with the gods in the Renzoris as to who was trying to frustrate my conversation between me and Ivan? Because I suspect that they are.
I think we'll do that this Saturday.
yeah, I know what's coming. Raymond, thank you very much for creating the time to be with me, and thank God you were here, because then I wouldn't know what to have done with Ivan. So you were able to continue the conversation. So thank you very much, and for bringing a perspective from Oxford.
All right. Thank you so much.